criminal case. Yet even in stating those facts, they would not go on the record, because a lot of these are just unreported, just go under the radar. Not only unreported in the sense of the police, who say, you know, these Muslim youth, you can't do anything about it. We can't prosecute them. If we take them into the courts will just let them out. So there's no reason to even bring a case against them. And they know it time and again over decades it's happened. So they know that you can't prosecute minorities, because minorities are subject to so much racism that who would want to prosecute them for anything? So anything minorities do, they're just speaking out against racism, so we can't prosecute them. And a lot of this comes down hard on Jews. Why is anti-Semitism so widespread in Europe? Page 142. Though Americans have been taught to think of Europeans as civilized and worldly, the countries of Western Europe, unlike the United States, are not melting pots. Yes, France, for one, does have a revolutionary tradition of supposedly considering all Frenchmen equal and all equally French, regardless of race, ethnicity, or religion. Many Frenchmen claim to cherish this secular egalitarian ideal. But in France, rhetoric often bears little resemblance to reality. The widespread collaboration of French Gentiles in the Holocaust testifies to the shallowness of many Frenchmen's dedication to liberté, égalité, fraternité. In France, as elsewhere in Europe, the same native traditions of anti-Semitism that led to the cooperation with the final solution remain very much alive. In America, the nation of immigrants, the ability and willingness of Jews to integrate harmoniously into mainstream society and to champion American values has made them the most successful of ethnic groups. In Europe, that same ability brought them to the edge of extinction. Among Western European elites, I'd suggest Muslims are more popular than Jews precisely because they insist on retaining their differences, keeping to themselves, and rejecting the European identity. There is one of the best possible explanations I have ever heard for anti-Semitism, and why in America anti-Semitism is unknown. There are people who say bad things about the Jews, and in Borat, that stupid Borat video, some people think it's style. They think there's something, you know, more stylish or some intellectual intelligentsia about hating Jews. But there's no anti-Semitism in America compared to Europe. And if Europe has this mentality, this caste system mentality, oh, I'm French and you're a third immigrant to France, but you're not French. Your parents are from Morocco, your grandparents were from Morocco, your parents were born in France, and you were born in France, but you're not French, you're an immigrant. That sort of mentality that just permeates all life, their whole idea, everything. That was like the last way they could sneak in their old world views underneath this new economic hegemony America brought, and they snuck it in there and they got it. And if the Jews don't really have a country they call their own. The Jews are at home anywhere. They're cosmopolitan in a sense. They transcend that caste system. They transcend that comfortable little pigeonholing people here and there. I can see why they would be hated for that in this idiotic culture of Western Europe. Okay, just one last point from page 202. They're talking about the fact that even though some people are waking up to militant Islam, and there were even some people on the left, some women's group, there's a women's group called Neither Whores Nor Submissive. That's a reaction against Islam, submissive whores. Right? Western women are whores, and the good Muslim woman is submissive. So there's a women's group called Neither Whores Nor Submissive. That's nice. Left wing, Charles Bremer observed that France's left wing, which long shunned criticism of Islam as stock in trade of Jean-Marie Le Pen, was now finally denouncing, quote, the totalitarian, anti-feminist, anti-Semitic doctrines of the fundamentalists. Sacre bleu. I don't know what that means, but I've heard it before. Anyways, so he says some things were looking good. They shut down Hezbollah's Arabic language TV channel in France. Great. The nation's Muslim Council, a government body established to advance religious moderation, so the nation has a Muslim Council. The government said, we want to do something to help moderate Islam in France. Let's have a government-sponsored council with certain powers. Just project what you think would happen. Let me give you a corollary in American history. We'll give you two corollaries in American history. When trains started crossing borders in America, trade between states became more and more of an issue. It used to be economies were mainly localized. There was some trade, there was the Erie Canal or whatever, but mostly trade was in localized, smaller economic units. The trains changed that. And then, so they instituted what's called the Interstate Commerce Commission, the ICC. Now, the Interstate Commerce Commission was called upon for further regulation, was given much more power in the 1920s when trucks started competing with trains for moving freight. And they said, oh, you gotta control the trucks, gotta control the truck. So instead of coming in and keeping the trucks from violating people's rights and keeping trucking from getting too expensive and keeping the prices down, instead of coming in and keeping competition fair, they came in and take over the ICC, and they raised shipping rates, and they raised truck rates, and they raised railroad rates, and they provide monopolies in different areas of the country and stuff. And today there are people who have trucking permits, and they don't drive a truck, and they don't own a truck, but they got a trucking permit, and they just lease it out to somebody. And they make a perfectly good living without owning a truck or driving a truck or operating a truck or anything, because of these stupid frickin' permits. And you have to have a permit, so you lease one from somebody and you can make a profit, and on top of that you can pay the lease on the permit. Stupid layers of bureaucracy and stuff. Because you set up a government body to fix a problem, and the people who would be benefited by that government body's power take it over. Nobody else is interested in taking over that government body, except the people who would be benefited by the powers you've granted it. So the people who want the benefits from the powers it has try to take it over and do. If it takes decades, it takes decades. Now, the second case was I don't know. There was the organization that regulated the airlines, and it wouldn't let the airlines compete with each other by using lower prices, for example, because that would be in violation of antitrust laws. So the airlines fought with each other by offering more sumptuous meals and bigger sandwiches and better meals and stuff on board. So the government board got into that and said, well, okay, you can't serve a sandwich bigger than so-and-so, but you can't serve more than they actually regulated the size of sandwiches and meals to keep airlines from competing with each other. And all through this golden age of regulation, the airlines were too expensive for regular people to use. Very, very few people traveled on the airlines. You had to be middle class or above to even think of using them, and even the middle class could only use them once or twice a year. Nowadays anyone can afford $150 or $200 for a transcontinental flight. But anyways, so what happens is one of the airlines, Pan Am, gets control of that, and everything happens to favor Pan Am for like 2 decades, because they would be the ones to benefit from that council's power, and so special interests dictated they would take over that. And if you have a council, to make sure that this council isn't taken over by special interests, somebody's going to take over that council, and then they're going to use that council to take over this council. You can't stop it. The only thing to do is get government force out of the equation. But France had a different idea. It said we need a council to help moderate Islam in France. It established this to advance religious moderation, and this council was instead reportedly, quote, coming increasingly under the effective control of radicals. Now that is all that needs to be said about that, isn't it? You can't run an economy by government fiat. and you can't run a